A couple of years ago, when the patent on the Glock Gen 3 sunset and the gun market was flooded with non-Glock Glocks, many were made to compete on features which you paid handsomely for, which is interesting considering there's like no research and development that went into what is essentially a finished design. But meanwhile, PSA wades into the arena last year announcing the Dagger, which is their version of the Glock Clone, which competes on features, kind of, but definitely on cost. But is it just another Glock clone, or did they attempt to make some moves on the subtle science of perfection? Are you ready? Stand by. Welcome back to the Humble Marksman channel. I'm David, and this is the Palmetto State Armory Dagger. And for my YouTube manual reviewer, this is what the gun looks like on the manufacturer's website, and this is what it looks like in my hand. That's right, this is a totally unmodified gun, so let that monetization roll. And I purchased this gun from Palmetto State Armory in the early third quarter of 2021. I paid $349 plus shipping and plus transfer to my FFL. So today's video sponsor is my lovely patrons over on Patreon. I really appreciate the support they provide, and if you like my content and would like 3 to 5 posts per week, that's a good place to keep up with what's going on with the channel, as well as my training diary for USPSA shooting, so check that out if that's of interest to you. So the Dagger is effectively a Glock 19 clone. It ships in a cardboard box, but it is a very nice cardboard box with a foam cutout. It comes with one PMag GL9 15-round magazine, and this is the base model of the Dagger, which is the concealed carry cut in two-tone flat dark earth, and I specifically chose the flat dark earth color because I desperately want Nut and Fancy's approval, but because it's a factory Cerakote job and not a rattle can Duracoat job that I did myself baking in my wife's oven, I've been informed that I can't go play guns in the desert. Anyway, moving on, there are some negatives to this pistol. I am hugely positive on it. My initial impressions on it are significantly positive. We'll get into that. There are a few drawbacks to this pistol, but in true YouTuber fashion, I'm gonna put that all the way at the end of the video, and you're not allowed to use the chapters in the timescale down below and just skipping to the end. That would be cheating. So if you fire up your Wayback Machine and get up to 88 miles an hour, you can go back to the SHOT Show in 2020 where they announced the PSA Dagger. There were originally 2 variants of it. There was going to be this model, which is the base model you see here, introduced at $299, and then there was going to be the combat model, or whatever they're calling it, that had the optics cut, the co-witness sight, and all that stuff, and it was going to be like an extra $50, which is a really, really good deal for an optics-ready pistol, specifically in the Glock family. But then COVID happened and guns started being bought at record numbers, and here we are now, and it's $349. And honestly, I'm not even mad at them, because getting into the Glock ecosystem for $350 is a whale of a deal. I'm not mad. Like, this is easily a $350 gun. No questions asked. So kind of jumping right in, we're gonna start kind of zoomed way out on the biggest departures from the Glock platform, and then kind of zoom in on the features that are less divergent and honestly stuff that you're less likely to care about. So starting way out there, the frame is obviously different, and I've got a bunch of Glock 19 clones at this point, and I can say that this is my favorite frame that I have handled so far. It has a slight palm swell at the back of the gun, so what ends up happening is the hollow of your palm, when you get a good firing grip on the gun, is filled by the frame, which is something that doesn't happen on a typical Glock or Glock clone. The result is you're making more surface area, so the texture that the grip does have adheres to both hands pretty well. The texture they call aggressive, but I think that's probably being a little bit optimistic. I would call it a solid medium. The depth of the texture is not quite deep enough to really lock in the flesh on your hands, but it does okay when your hands are wet or anything like that. However, you don't really need the texture because the shape of the grip is so squared away that it absolutely locks in. They have re-engineered the grip tang to make it super ergonomic. It doesn't feel like a 2x4 with eased edges is being pressed down into the web of your hand like a Glock. The trigger guard has ample relief with one single finger groove that kind of locks in right under that knuckle, and the lip at the bottom of the grip kind of funnels your hand up under the trigger guard, and the end result is when you get a good grip on the gun, it's going absolutely nowhere. Since this is a domestically sourced frame, you'll notice there's not that stupid thumb ledge that has people all across America shooting Glocks left and insisting that Glocks shoot left, because you don't put your thumb on the gun like this. If this is how you hold a Glock, I've made a video that can fix your leftward shooting tendencies on a Glock. You might check that out. It's going to be up there. Another nice feature about the frame is they've actually relieved around the takedown tabs. On the regular Glock pistols, you kind of have to use your like thumbnail and fingernail to pull the tabs down. They've relieved the top of the tab so you can really just pull straight down on it, and that is a super nice feature. And the next most obviously glaring thing is they changed the way the trigger functions. Rather than having a trigger tab safety that goes almost flush, they introduced a hinge trigger. So at this point, you're possibly thinking, because I said the words palm swell and hinge trigger, did Palmetto State Armory just make an M&P that takes Glock mags? Kind of? Maybe? I don't know what it is, but whatever it is they've made, I have to say, feels nicer in the hand than just a plain Jane Gen 3 Glock. But the trigger face itself is super broad and super flat. The hinge, when you're pulling on it during the take-up, you don't really notice the trigger hinge moving. When you pull through the break, you'll feel the trigger flex as you bottom out at the back of the frame. Not a big deal. When you're shooting it real fast, you won't even notice it, but if you dry fire it at the counter at your gun store or something like that, you may notice it. And you may be thinking to yourself, oh, please tell me, did they upgrade the internals? Is the trigger quality better than a Gen 3 Glock? No, they didn't. In fact, it's exactly the same as a Gen 3 Glock, despite the fact that all of the internals are coated with some sort of black coating that appears to provide hardness and lubricity. The quality of the trigger is honestly no better. And to characterize it for you, if you've not pulled a Glock trigger, when you get on the trigger, you come to a false wall. And as you pull through that false wall, that is the firing pin block lifting. It's also known as creep. And then you get to the actual wall, and right now I'm on the actual wall. And just a little bit more force, it will release, and then there's a little bit of over travel. The reset is very positive, very forceful, throws your finger forward, audible tactile reset, exactly what you would want to see with a Glock. Moving up to the top of the gun with the slide that they've provided, it is a very minimalist slide. They tri-top the slide, which is what they're calling their concealed carry cut, which means they also dehorn the rear of it, so it's not supposed to snag your shirt when you present from inside the waistband holsters, which is kind of neat. They gave the barrel a flush target crown, which is kind of cool, which means the barrel is perfectly level at the end of the slide. It's kind of cool. It's a high-end look, but it does mean that the barrel is about 1/10 of an inch shorter than an OEM Austrian. The guide rod is a full-length stainless steel captured recoil spring. It is a very, very nice touch. And getting up onto the sights are metal 3-dot sights. Why in 2021, when we know 3-dot sights are a bunch of bullshit, are we putting them on top of these guns? You could have done anything you wanted, Palmetto State Armory, anything at all. And you thought, hey, I'm gonna drill that perfectly great black rear sight and I'm gonna put this white paint in there and everyone's gonna ignore it or potentially fill it in with a Sharpie. You may be thinking I'm a little jaded about 3-dot sights because it promotes bad technique. They're not any faster, and I promise they're not more precise than actually using notch and post sights the way they are intended. But that said, the machining on the sights is done very well. The edges are very crisp. The notch has a good air gap to front sight ratio, which allows you to set up precise shots. So for 3-dot sights, they're acceptable. The front sight's a little bit fat. I wish it was a little thinner, so precision shots were a little bit easier, but for a concealed carry set of sights, these are perfectly serviceable. Getting into the final departure of the Glock form is they redesigned the locking block. You may notice that the third pin is way up here at the front of the trigger guard as opposed to being right on top of the trigger pin. That's how they've redesigned it. The locking block is significantly larger so that that pin and the locking block will not work from an OEM Glock. This pin, the rear pin, and the front pin are both roll pins as opposed to solid pins, whereas the trigger pin is a traditional solid pin. As far as shooting is concerned, because the geometry of the grip is so squared away, the texture is very good. The trigger face is very broad and it promotes a very easy pull straight to the rear as opposed to a Glock trigger, which is very narrow. It kind of has a hump on it. It's very easy to pull it offline to your support side if you're not very careful in how you address the trigger. This is much broader and generally much easier to pull straight to the rear. So when you shoot it fast, it's very nice. Because they didn't take too much weight off the slide, it's still a reasonably soft shooting gun, and it is very, very pleasant to shoot. Accuracy seemed very good with the gun. I was totally squared away with both defensive ammo and my own reloads, which I tested the gun with, which is going to bring us to the downsides of the gun. And I've basically got three. We'll start with the most serious one, and this is something that they may have some splaining to do. Now, if you go on the website and you specifically look at, I believe it is the FDE reviews, because they have 3 SKUs on the website for the different colors that they have, and the reviews are specific to that model. I think it's under the FDE model. You can see on the screen here, somebody is having a trigger pin that walks out as they fire the gun. That's somebody other than me, but mine does that too. I took this to the range a few times, the first time for most of the B-roll filming that you've been seeing so far, and when I got back and I looked at the pin, it was just proud of the frame, maybe a 1/16 of an inch or so, enough where I could see that it had walked to the right. Subsequent range trips where I wasn't shooting as much, I noticed that the pin, when it started center, had drifted a little bit to the right. I don't know if it's gonna drift any more than it already has and cause a failure. I'm gonna stop recentering it and keep shooting the gun. If it does fail, I'll make a follow-up video and let you know. This is a great time for you people to jump into the comments if you have a PSA Dagger and let me know if your trigger pin is walking too, where it's just a David issue and I have all the luck in the world, or if it's potentially a bigger issue. The next issue is holster compatibility. Now, I understand that Glock has trademarked the Glock silhouettes. They have to do something to dress up the front of the trigger guard, but the frame doesn't fit quite as well into most Kydex holsters as I would like. I like to use Harry's holsters. He is super meticulous in his molds. He iterates on his molds using CAD and a CNC router, so the molds you end up getting are super precise. While this gun is serviceable in the Harry's holsters, it doesn't have the positive retention that you generally would get from a Harry's holsters or any of the top quality Kydex manufacturers. However, I did try it also in a Ghost 5.2 level 3 duty holster, and that actually locks in the same as my Gen 5 19. So it's totally squared away in that, but that's a different kind of retention mechanism, so there's something else at play there. If you want to save 10% on your own Harry's holsters, there's a link down in the description that will take you there, and you can use my channel name, The Humble Marksman, at checkout to save 10%. Moving on from there, again, guys, it is 2021 and we're still releasing guns without optics cuts first. Why? Just release the optics ready variant, and people who don't like optics can ignore them, and people who like optics can mount them on there. Like, why would you introduce 3 whole new SKUs for these 3 different color pistols when you could just have one pistol in 3 different colors and life would go on? So I'm a little salty about that, since I had to buy an iron sight version to get an early model of the gun and not the optics version, which is what I really wanted. But I will say, getting into kind of my overall opinion of the pistol, I think it's a really good gun. I actually carried it for over a week while I was preparing this review. The finish is held up beautifully. The ergonomics as you hold it in hand are brilliant. It is a higher quality feeling gun than an OG Austrian, which is really saying something, although maybe it's not, because when you pick up a Glock pistol, it's like, this isn't worth what they're asking for it. The best thing about a Glock is that they're very easy to maintain at like an armorer level. So if you're like the head of a department armory and you're servicing all of your officers' guns, it's very easy, doesn't take a lot of time, and you can do the whole thing with a punch. It doesn't have a great trigger. It has terrible sights. The ergonomics leave a lot to be desired. There's nothing super great about the gun other than it punches way above its weight class, considering it is a very lightweight gun and it is so pleasant to shoot. Glocks are honestly really, really good guns for everything they are. It's just they're significantly overpriced. And how do I know that they're overpriced? Well, in 2021, we've witnessed the price of guns rise over the past 2 years as people have been buying guns in record numbers. The cost of a Gen 3 Glock 19 is stated about $500 when everybody else is up between 10 and 20%. Wonder why that is? Because it's never been a $500 gun. So while steel is more expensive than it was back in 2016 when it was a $500 gun, in 2021 it's still a $500 gun with likely a higher cost of production, but they're just letting their profit margin kind of go away on that one and keeping it set at a price point. So that's why I know the Glock is an overpriced pistol. But looking at kind of the picture of the PSA Dagger in the context of all of the other value price point driven sort of guns in the concealed carry space, why would you buy any other sub $400 pistol when you can have one that is in the Glock family of guns, which has the most holsters, the most sights, basically the most everything you could want, and is super reliable? Like, the ergonomics are fixed. Everything that's wrong with a Glock is generally fixed with this pistol. So I think this is a significant pistol. I wouldn't be surprised if it does begin to put pressure on some of the other price point competition guns. The only thing going for it is because the people who are making it, Palmetto State Armory, sell direct and they don't use a distributor type model. So like the brick and mortar type stores, nobody's going to go in there and be able to pick up one of these and be like, hey, this is a nice pistol, I'd like to buy it. Like, you kind of have to already know about it, and you have to buy it through the internet, shipped to your FFL dealer to get a transfer. So while I think it's an awesome gun, I don't think it's gonna permeate the market to the level that it honestly should based on merit. Like, this is a better mousetrap, but I'm gonna keep an eye on that trigger pin. If something goes wrong with it, I will let you know. I will probably end up buying one of the optic ready variants to compare to the M&P that I like to carry, because I honestly, I think I like this gun a little bit better and how it fits in my hand than the M&P. And if you've made it this far, you can check out this video on how to stop shooting Glocks left, because I absolutely promise that it's you and not the gun. I appreciate you guys, and I'll catch you on the next one.